Hi guys, in this video I'm going to show you how we can get Google Fonts from the Google Fonts API into our Bubble application. So as we are starting, let's head on over to the plugins tab, and we're going to need three plugins to accomplish the goal. The first one is going to be the Bubble API connector. The second one is going to be the Toolbox plugin. And the third one is going to be a color picker. So now that we have installed all these plugins successfully, let's head on over to set up our Google developer account, which is needed to access Google Fonts. So to do that, we're just going to open a new tab and search Google developers, and we're going to select the first link. And I have already set up my Google developers account, so I'm just going to switch to it. You can sign in with your Google account to get access to the developer account and set your account up. So I've already set up my account and I've logged in, and now in the search toolbar up here I'm going to type fonts API key. We are going to select the first search result, and here we are, the developer API for the fonts. Now, after reading the first section, we are sure that uh, it's a JSON format. Uh, this information is going to be useful when we are setting up our API call back in the Bubble API connector section. So here uh, we can see the different examples of how we are going to get uh, our fonts. So the example of the result is looking like this. So there are two things. The first thing is the kind, and the next thing is items inside the JSON. And inside the items, we have uh, the family, its variants, and the subsets, version, last modified date, and also the files URL. So now that we know how the response is going to look, let's get our key and get started. So you can click on get a key here and acquire an API key. Uh, you can create a new project and then you can get a key, but I have already created a project, so I'm going to use that project and I'm going to click next. So I've already gotten my key, so I'm just going to display that key and copy that key. Now this is the response. This is the endpoint that we are going to hit, and we're going to get this response. So let's copy the URL. Let's paste it here, and in the key I am going to paste the key that I have. So this is my key, and when I hit enter, this is the response we get. So we are getting the correct response. That means our key is working, and we are getting basically the same response that was shown in the example over here. So now let's use this URL and our key to get our fonts inside our Bubble application. So we're going to head on to the plugin section and back to the API connector. Now I'm going to name my API as Google Fonts. You can name whatever you want. We had the authentication inside our URL in the form of the key. So we're going to choose private key in URL, and instead of private key, we're going to name it as key, and the value is going to be our keys value. So pretty straightforward. Now now that we have set up our key, we are going to set up our call. So it's going to be a get call. We are getting the data obviously, and it's in the form of JSON, so no need to change anything over here. You can change the name to whatever you want, but I think API call is good enough. So what we are going to do here is we are going to copy the URL. Obviously, we're not going to copy the key field. We are just going to copy the URL till the question mark, because we have already defined our key over here. And now that that's done, we'll obviously need to initialize the call to see if it works. So let's see. Great. So we are getting items and it's in the form of a list, which means we have more than one fonts, and that is exactly what we wanted. So let's save this response and head on over to the design tab. Now, this is where we are going to show the Google Fonts in the form of a drop down. And the drop down is really convenient because inside the drop down we can see all the fonts and we can choose all the fonts. And in the example that I'm going to display in a few minutes, we are going to see the real-time font changes in an HTML element. So let's start by getting a drop down on our page. So the page layout is going to be column and it's full width. The minimum width you can set it to 0, 1200, whatever you like. The minimum height, whatever you want. So that's all up to you. And let's get a drop down on the page. So we've got the drop down. Let's give it a meaningful name. So this is going to be drop down Google Fonts. The placeholder, you can choose whatever you want. I'm going to choose a font, which is obviously appropriate. And choices are going to be dynamic choices. The type of choices is going to be an API call item, and the source is going to be getting a data from an external API. So we're going to choose our API, which we set up, Google Fonts API call. And what we want from the API call is the items, not the kind. So we're going to choose items here. The caption is going to be whatever you want, but the thing is we want to choose the fonts based on their name, and the name field is over here in the family section. So let's say current options family. There we go. So we've successfully set up the drop down, and that's not it. We actually want to display how the font looks. So we are getting the fonts and it's good enough, but we could do a lot of things with it, which I'm just going to show you a small example of it. So this is our drop down. The next thing I'm going to do is get sizes. So as you know, every font has a size, and we are going to get that size also in the form of a drop down. So let's go to drop down. Oops. So we have another drop down over here, and we are going to name it font size. Now that we've named it font size, this is where the toolbox plugin is going to come in handy. So we're going to use list of numbers, and it's an element which we get from the toolbox plugin. So let's give it a start number 1 and the length of the list to be, let's say, 50, and the increments are going to be in ones. So this is basically me setting up the sizes. So I want the size of the font to be from 1 pixels to 50 pixels. You can use 200, 300, whatever you want, and the increments to be in twos, threes, fives, whatever you like. So let's go on and give uh, the choices over here. So let's first choose a size in the placeholder, and let's go to dynamic choices. The type of choices are going to be number, and the source is going to be list of number is list. So this is what we're getting. So right now this is pretty bare bones, but let's preview and see how it looks. As you can see, it was loading, so it was fetching the fonts from the API, and here we are. We are getting all the different Google fonts. So this looks pretty good. And let's see the size. So these are the sizes that we have, and we have the sizes till 50. So that's pretty cool too. Now let's structure both of these together. So let's put them in a row container, and let's put this in the middle. All right, so we have put our drop downs over here. The next thing that I'm going to do is set up the lengths of these groups. So I guess this much is enough, but I am going to decrease the widths of both of these. So let's, okay, so the next thing we want to do is we want to see how the fonts look. So I'm actually going to give it a bigger size, so 150 seems fine. And right, so now that we have our group set up, fonts and size, the next thing we want to do is display how our fonts look. So let's get an HTML element for that. So here's our HTML element. Let's center align it. So I'm going to be entering a code here, which obviously is going to be in the description of this video. I'm going to paste that code, and I'll explain what it does. Okay, so now that I have pasted that code, so it's basically an HTML code. What this HTML code is doing is it has a link tag, and inside the link tag we are giving it an href, and inside the href we are going to specify the family of the font which we want to show. Once we get that href embedded into the HTML file in the head, what we are going to do is we are going to create a class, and the class is going to be named as preview. And inside the preview we have the font family, which is going to come from our drop down over here. We have the size, which is going to come from the drop down over here, and obviously our color, which is going to come from the air color picker, which I'll add into this group pretty soon. So after we have created our style tag, we are just going to create a body tag, and inside the body tag I'm going to give an ID of preview to the h1 element which we create, and this is the text. So basically all the styles that we choose from this drop down and the size and the color is going to affect this text that we have written: the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. So let's get our color picker and get started. Here we are. So I'm going to place the color picker over here, and let's change their layout. Let's keep them in the middle. Let's make this element fixed width, and let's apply some spacing to this group. So let's go with 450. So the spacing has been applied. Let's also increase the width of this group. So let's say 550. 600, 620. Okay, so 650 seems to be the one where we are getting the text in a single line. We can also correct and customize the color picker. So let's say I want the initial color to be all black, and we don't need transparency for this, and the color is going to be in the format of hex code. So yeah, everything seems good. So the next thing that we are going to do is we are going to apply this font families and the sizes and also the color to our HTML element that we placed here. So let's go, let's do it. So in the family here, we are going to add the family which is going to come from this drop down. So we're going to insert dynamic data, drop down Google Fonts and its value. And after the value, we are going to choose the family, obviously. So the next thing we are going to do is encode. In quotations, we are going to do the same. Drop down Google Fonts, values, family. So now that that's done, we can go to font size and use the font size that we are getting from here, which is going to be drop down font sizes value. So, and last but not least, color. So we're going to get air color picker A's value. So now that we have set it all up, let's see all of this in action in our preview. Let's refresh the preview. Okay, so now that we have everything set up, we got our drop downs, we got the color picker, and we got our text. So let's change things. So first of all, I'm going to go to the size and I'm going to select 35. So as you can see, real-time changes on the HTML elements text. And let's go to the font and choose a font from the drop down. So I'm gonna go with let's say this one. So this is how it looks, and let's change the font. So we just change the font and we're getting the changes in real time. You can also change the color to kind of change the way it looks. So this is how it's looking, and yeah, so this was it from my side. You get a lot of other things in the JSON response which you can play around and um, see what the other changes do, what the other response does, the objects in the response do, sorry. So so yeah, this is it from my side. Hope that you find this short video on how we can use Google Fonts in Bubble and how we can get them into our Bubble application useful. And that's all from my side. Take care and peace.